Good day, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Ecolo TV. We are dwelling more on national security challenges, threats, and opportunities in Nigeria. Most recently, the President of Nigeria, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, raised the importance of having state policing in Nigeria, and a committee has been set up to look at the intricacies, advantages, disadvantages, pros and cons, and other functionalities. As a professional who has been involved in state policing overseas, I understand the frontline operations, the day in, day out operations, data collection, surveillance, intelligence, antisocial behaviors, organized criminals, every so much things we've experienced in state policing because that's what we practice in the UK. My suggestion to Mr. President and to the committee leadership is for them to look to make committee members that have expertise in research, committee members that have expertise in project management, in administration, and most importantly, to bring people that have frontline policing experiencing in state policing, not in federal policing, because we are talking about state policing. You cannot bring, for example, with all due respect, you cannot bring a Navy officer to come and talk to you about state policing. You cannot bring an Air Force officer to talk about state policing. You have to look for officers that have done state policing, that understands day in, day out of state policing. So I encourage them to look into the gray areas. Example, how do they get recruitment? Because states have different financial capacities. What Lagos State can do, maybe Zamfara cannot do it. So how do they get recruited? Who pays for the recruitment? Who pays salaries of these officers? And how do we make sure that these officers' salaries are paid on when due from each state to each state? Also, how do we monitor the activities of these officers to make sure that they don't take the laws into their hands, to make sure that corruption is quickly checked in the state policing, to make sure that policing officers in the state do not abuse controversial substances or illegal substances that can make them not to be focused, that can make them to be in what we call the red mist zone. How do we monitor their behaviors, their characters? There could be need for them to have monitoring teams, regulatory teams that monitors each state by state to make sure that state officers are up to their jobs. And also other gray areas will be issues about to make sure that each state that, for example, Lagos State may have the capacity to employ 100 police officers. How do we make sure that they maintain that number? How do we monitor that that number has not dwindled from 100 in 6 months to 50 or from 100 in 1 year to 30? And in other states like Imo State, Abia State, Anambra State, Kaduna State, Katsina State, we need to monitor that the numbers they recruited are staying at that level. And that means that there is job fulfillment, there is satisfaction in the job, there is encouragement in the job, and we need to also make sure that there are monitors, regulatory teams that regulate what these people do, check issue of abuse, substance abuse, and all this kind of taking laws into their hands. And also, we have to be very clear about interstate relationships. So what I mean by this is when criminals are being chased, by example, Kano State Police, state policing into Katsina State, into Jigawa State, for example, which is an neighboring state. If these criminals get to the borders of Kano and Jigawa, should the Kano State Police stop and hand over to Jigawa State Police or hand over to the federal police? In that gap of time, in that lapse of time, would it mean that those criminals may escape? So we have to check these gray areas to have a control command order to avoid misunderstanding or fighting. And if those criminals are probably arrested in Jigawa State after being tipped off by Kano State Police, what happens? Should Jigawa State hand them over to Kano State Police? Or could Jigawa State say, no, we're not going to hand them over to you? They are high profile criminals. We want to prosecute them or want to give them bail or whatever. There needs to be clear areas. And at what point can the federal government police step in and say, we want to take these criminals? Give it to me, Jigawa State Police. Give it to us, Kano State Police. We need to check these gray areas to avoid such things happening. That's why I'm encouraging that the committee should bring experts, both academic, administrative, and frontline officers that understand the day in, day out of police officers in the state to make sure that they meet the highest level of standard of professionalism so we can be able to save more lives and more properties. Thank you for watching Ikolo TV. Keep subscribing. My name is Vin Onyekwelo. Thank you.